Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Truth for the Final Generation Adventist Congregation Health Talk. I want to welcome you and from wherever you're joining us. Welcome and God bless. Well, this afternoon we're going to be talking about a common vegetable that has just been highlighted in a bit of research reported out of Denmark. But before we get to that, and I'm choosing that because people usually talk about the expense of eating healthy, and that is because they're choosing, even when they're choosing to be vegetarian or vegan, maybe choosing expensive things that are nowhere as healthy as cheap articles. Here in Barbados, Professor Fraser usually highlights the fact that eating healthy does not have to be expensive. And in looking at this vegetable this evening, a common vegetable that has hit the research again, we will confirm that. But before we get to that, out of the UK, Dr. John Campbell was commenting yesterday on the fact that the Indian Delta variant and a spin-off from it is now causing a spike, a third wave in England, the UK, and the rest of Europe now will be very careful to screen or block UK tourists, France and Germany and so on. And only goes to show how careful we have to be in not lowering our guard because this new variant is on the march. It is more infectious and it may be even a bit more dangerous in terms of causing severe illness. And people with vaccines may still get the virus. They may not become severely ill or be hospitalized, but the point is you can still catch the virus and may be able to pass it on. So all this boils down to the importance of following carefully the public health protocols, mask wearing, hand sanitizing, avoiding crowds, being careful, because you don't know who may be having what. And the other thing, of course, is to keep our immune system in the best shape possible. We mentioned the basic principles of good immunity already: adequate sleep at night, exercise 5 to 6 times a week, plenty of fruits and vegetables. That would be of fundamental importance. The healthy diet, lots of fruit and veg. And then mentioning the vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, selenium, N-acetylcysteine. We mentioned those basic things already. And we must not lower our guard either in terms of public health protocol or in healthy eating and keeping our immune systems as strong as we can. Because even after this scenario settles, we don't know what else may soon happen. So our health message, primary prevention and primary care, remains of the utmost importance. Just one other thing before we get into this update on this common vegetable. I would have stressed last week about excess of fructose, like in high fructose corn syrup, added to a lot of things, and especially if a person is pre-diabetic or obese, avoid high fructose corn syrup and concentrate on achieving ideal weight. But a piece of research just came out saying that eating normal fresh fruit, even although normal fresh fruit contains, among other sugars, fructose, this research shows that eating fresh fruit, and the one that was singled out was, well, all of them, but apples came out in the mention, that eating fresh fruit actually reduces the risk of diabetes type 2, and especially within the context of exercise and vegetables and so on. So the fructose in the fruit, as the creator has it, fresh fruit, doesn't pose the same risk as the concentrated refined product in high fructose corn syrup. So I thought I would mention that to relieve certain anxieties of people who are asking. So our basic health message: fruits and veg, exercise, water, sunlight for vitamin D, coping with stress, trust in God, abstemiousness, self-control, moderation, all very important at this point in time in our world's history. Okay, we move now to what I'm going to be mentioning. This article is interesting. It is entitled, "What's New and Beneficial About..." Can you guess the vegetable we're going to be talking about? A cheap, common vegetable you can grow in your backyard. And it is so much more healthy than the exotic things people might want to buy in frozen stuff and canned stuff when they're going vegetarian, because they're looking for taste rather than quality. So listen to the article, "What's New and Beneficial About the Common Cabbage?" Cabbage, yes. Well, the report says, did you know that cabbage was one of 2 vegetable types, the other one was a root vegetable, found to be a mainstay for prevention of type 2 diabetes in a recent study in the country of Denmark, looking at 57,000 adults. In this very large-scale study, adults who followed what is called the Healthy Nordic Food Index were found to have the lowest incidence of type 2 diabetes. And importantly, this key health benefit of reduced incidence of type 2 diabetes in Denmark was found to be linked to 6 articles of dietary intake. 1 was fish, 2 was rye bread instead of wheat bread, 3 was oatmeal, 4 apples and pears, 5 root vegetables like carrots and beets and so on, and 6 cabbage. Researchers have now identified nearly 20 different flavonoids and 15 different phenols in cabbage, all of which have demonstrated powerful antioxidant activity. And this impressive list of antioxidant phytonutrients in cabbage is one key reason why an increasing number of studies in recent times continue to link cabbage intake to decreased risk of several cardiovascular diseases and other chronic diseases as well. And in terms of price per edible cup, even the Economic Research Service in the USA, Department of Agriculture, has shown that cabbage to be the second most economically cooked vegetable in terms of price per edible cup. In other words, cabbage is cheap and cabbage is high quality, and cabbage is better than a lot of what we would use a Barbadian terms for hyphenutan things that people would want to eat when they're vegan. The common cabbage, cheap and extremely high quality for the human body. Well, there are hundreds of varieties of cabbage grown worldwide, hundreds of varieties. But of special interest in recent research, in recent research studies, have been the cabbage varieties that fall into the red-purple category. So hundreds of types of cabbage, but the red-purple group, we call it purple cabbage, red cabbage, and there are many varieties in there, but that category, red-purple, have been shown to be the most beneficial. All cabbage, very good, but the red-purple comes out as the most beneficial. That is because the red-purple cabbage contains anthocyanin. Once you see the purple color, anthocyanin antioxidants, and also some cyanidins. And these have been the focus of research recently. Impressively, the anthocyanins in red cabbage are a major factor in the ability of cruciferous vegetables to provide cardiovascular protection for your heart and blood vessels and coronary arteries, including protection of red blood cells and the bone marrow. And after using red cabbage or purple cabbage, and that's a cabbage I like to put in my morning green shake, the red cabbage. Can use quite a bit of it. After eating or using this vegetable, they found that blood levels of beta carotene, lutein is a very powerful antioxidant for the eye, the brain, the colon, the prostate, and the lung. People know it especially for the eye. And total blood antioxidant capacity have been found to improve along with red cabbage intake, while the oxidized LDL cholesterol, that is so-called bad cholesterol, that level has been found to decrease. So you want that low density lipoprotein LDL cholesterol, commonly called the bad cholesterol, although that is not a good term, to be low, and you want the HDL, high density lipoprotein or good cholesterol, to be high. And the purple or red cabbage does all of this for us. And it therefore helps to keep the blood vessels flexible, helps to keep the coronary arteries clear, and as we shall see in a moment, helps to reduce the incidence of type 2 diabetes, and helps to protect the brain, and even of crucial importance, helps to reduce the risk of a number of cancers, including colon, prostate, lung, and pancreas. In addition, cabbage turns out to be an especially good source of another substance called sinigrin, S-I-N-I-G-R-I-N. Sinigrin is one of the sulfur-containing molecules in cabbage. It is actually a glucosinolate and has received very special attention in cancer prevention research in recent times. The sinigrin in cabbage can also be converted into allyl isothiocyanate as a sulfur-containing polyphenol, and this has been shown to be very protective against cancer of the bladder, colon, and prostate. Red cabbage, anthocyanins, sinigrin, and the sinigrin is a glucosinolate, and these are powerful cancer protectors. So some red cabbage, steam it lightly, some red cabbage, grate it, and some red cabbage, put it in a morning green shake. Get it in. Now these two compounds, the glucosinolates and sinigrin, and they've now found another one called glucobrasicin. These can be converted into other cancer protective compounds. For example, indole 3-carbinol, IC3, which is an isothiocyanate, and diindolylmethane, DIM. DIM is an interesting sulfur-containing compound that can be produced in the stomach when you eat broccoli and cabbage, and helps to protect the stomach from Helicobacter pylori, which likes to trouble the stomach, stomach cancer, and it protects the whole gut. And diindolylmethane, methane, DIM, has been shown to have cancer-preventing properties for cancer types mentioned above: colon, prostate, bladder, for example. So look at the common cabbage and look at the common red-purple cabbage, which is available all through the Caribbean. It can be grown. And what they're showing now that if you buy the purple cabbage seeds and sprout them, or if you find difficulty sprouting, you put them to, as if you're going to plant them. They're not doing the special sprouting in bottles that can be done, but sometimes they get a strong sulfur odor, and people get turned off by the odor. But even if you put a bunch of cabbage seeds in the soil and let the sprouts come up as if you were planting them then, rather than the special sprouting in a bottle, and you take some of them rather than letting them go to adult cabbage, they found that those new sprouts, however you allow them to form, contain a lot more sulfur-containing compounds, the sinigrin and the I3C, indole 3-carbinol, than even the adult cabbage. And therefore, you can put some of those sprouts in your salads, in a shake, and so on. Very important. As a matter of fact, one piece of research was showing even if you warm them slightly, you make the IC3 more bioavailable. So cabbage, from the time it is sprouting to the adult plant, so high quality in antioxidant, anti-inflammatory molecules of the anthocyanin and cyanidin and sinigrin types that can produce indole 3-carbinol, DIM, and other sulfur-containing molecules that are powerful against cancer. Well, the WHO and World Health Foods recommendations, you will want to include cabbage as one of the cruciferous vegetables you eat on a regular basis. Broccoli has usually taken the spotlight, but now this research shows that the humble cabbage, especially the red-purple one, cheap, easily grown, available all around the world, is a #1 vegetable to eat every single day. If you want to receive the fantastic health benefits provided by the cruciferous vegetables, broccoli is there, of course. Cauliflower is there. And by the way, broccoli and cauliflower are rich in protein as well. And you have, of course, the Brussels sprouts, wonderful nutrition in them too. But the cabbage, cheapest of the lot, and ranks very high, especially the red-purple cabbage, in antioxidant, cancer-preventing, cardiovascular protective power. Well, they're recommending 3/4 cup of cruciferous vegetables on a daily basis, 3/4 cup. And this amounts to about 5 cups per week. And if you go up to even a cup or 1.5 cups per day, they're saying that, so when you doing that morning green shake, put in some broccoli, put in some purple cabbage, put in some radishes, put in some Chinese cabbage, put in some kale, all as the cruciferous family. And that is massive artery protection and considerable cancer preventive power. And of course, in these days with pollution all around and the degeneration of the human body. We need to be as protective as we can, because we can do our best and something still happens, but we should do our best. They're saying traditional methods of steaming or boiling tend to make the cabbage watery. To avoid this result and promote optimal flavor, they recommend you can grate the cabbage and use it raw, put it in shape, just slice it up, chew it, or you can do what is called the healthy sauteing technique, which is just a little bit of either grapeseed oil or extra virgin olive oil, and you allow it to saute, not over a long period of time. You don't want any extra heat or prolonged heat, and you can put a little bit of turmeric on top and a few other flavoring herbs and have a nice sauteed cruciferous stuff. No prolonged sauteing. You don't want to be knocking or driving the what we call the stiffening out of the vegetable. You still want it to be crisp and as it were half raw. So the cruciferous vegetables, more research, and this one focusing on cabbage. The researcher goes on to say, while green cabbage is the most commonly eaten variety of cabbage around the world, we highly recommend using the red cabbage because of its added nutritional benefits and its robust, hearty flavor. We don't think you'll be disappointed, says the researchers. The rich red color of red cabbage reflects its concentration of anthocyanin polyphenols, which along with providing the unique antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, contribute to the robust taste. Red cabbage contains vitamin K, C, B6, manganese. It is rich in fiber, contains copper, B1, vitamin B1, folic acid, potassium, choline, phosphorus, iron, all of the usually traditionally labeled nutrients. And then it is very rich in proanthocyanins, anthocyanins, synegrin, indole 3-carbinol, diindolyl methane, and others that we have not even yet managed to characterize that are so powerful in protection. So when we look then at the red cabbage, we are going to focus now in summary, health benefits. While cardiovascular protection and decreased risk of type 2 diabetes have been areas of increased research interest with respect to the cabbage intake, it is the area of cancer prevention that still offers the largest number of health-related studies in research for this cruciferous vegetable. To date, more than 475 studies have examined the role of red purple cabbage in cancer prevention, and in some cases, even cancer treatment. The uniqueness of cabbage in cancer prevention is due to the 3 different types of nutrient richness found in this wonderful vegetable: antioxidant richness, anti-inflammatory richness, and richness in glucosinolates, that is the indole 3-carbinols, the DIM, which is formed from IC3 in the stomach, synegrin, and the others. Antioxidant-related health benefits of cabbage. Cabbage ranked in the WHF Foods rating as an excellent source of vitamin C, a very good source of manganese, but in terms of antioxidants, in the neurophytonutrient category, cabbage, especially red purple cabbage, is impressive, even among the other cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, which is usually the most talked about. Polyphenols from red cabbage rank at the top of the list for phytonutrient antioxidants in the cabbage. In fact, one group of researchers has described polyphenols as the primary factor in cabbage's overall antioxidant capacity and power to protect the cardiovascular system and reduce the risk of cancer. Even white cabbage, which is a lightly colored form of green cabbage that grows in some South Asian countries that people like, even that one that is not as powerfully colored as the red cabbage still contains about 50 milligrams of polyphenols in half a cup. Red cabbage makes its own unique contribution by providing more than that, and then its own red pigment polyphenols, the anthocyanins. And these anthocyanins qualify not only as antioxidant nutrients, but as anti-inflammatory nutrients as well. The antioxidant richness of cabbage is partly responsible for its cancer-preventing properties. Other factors here would be its fiber, which helps to keep the colon clean and healthy and helps to promote good gut bacteria. And those bacteria can use the cabbage fiber to actually make vitamin K2, which is another powerhouse. And the antioxidants in cabbage reduce free radical attack. This is what the researchers call reduce chronic oxidative stress. And chronic oxidative stress, that is free radical attack, increases the risk for cancer and all of the chronic diseases. More than a dozen cabbage phenols have been shown to contribute to its antioxidant capacity, more than a dozen. And these phenols are known to include benzoic acid, caffeic acid, cinnamic acid, coumaric acid, dimethyl benzoic acid, and hydroxybenzoic acid, and the hydroxycinnamonic acid, phenylacetic acid, rosmarinic acid, cinegrin, and then, of course, the indole 3-carbinol, vanillic acid, and a whole host of others, some that they haven't even characterized yet. The anti-inflammatory benefits of cabbage: without sufficient intake of anti-inflammatory nutrients, regulation of our inflammatory system can become difficult and compromised. We are all more prone to chronic inflammation in this toxic world in which we live and as we grow older, and especially if we are eating a lot of processed refined junk and only eating for taste and a lot of animal products and so on, we are going to be developing chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is gasoline for cancer, for cardiovascular disease, for diabetes type 2, for Alzheimer's. We want to reduce the chronic inflammatory index in our body, especially as we age. And the anthocyanins found in red cabbage are well documented for their anti-inflammatory properties, and therefore red cabbage is a standout anti-inflammatory food for this reason for everyone to enjoy. And all types of cabbage contain significant amounts of the polyphenols, but the anthocyanins found in red cabbage are even more powerful as flavonoids in terms of helping to reduce specific inflammation in specific organs. For example, in the red cabbage, you'll find artemethin, betanidine, butene, iquol, hydroxyflavone, camphorol, luteolin, a whole host of them that they're looking at. So we eat these things. Scientists are still searching to find out more of these molecules. We don't have to wait for them to find them out. We just eat the cabbage, and all that is in it, known and unknown, is going to be so beneficial. Well, the researchers started to focus on glucosinolates and cancer prevention from cabbage. Given the roles of free radical attack, oxidative stress, and chronic inflammation as risk factors for cancer, The antioxidant and anti-inflammatory richness of cabbage would provide anti-cancer health benefits, even without the addition of the glucosinolates. But the glucosinolates are cabbage's trump card with regard to anti-cancer benefits. The glucosinolates found in cabbage can be converted to isothiocyanate compounds that are powerfully cancer preventive for breast, bladder, colon, and prostate. Breast, bladder, colon, and prostate. And also, in that regard, kidney and pancreas. Some of the key glucosinolates in cabbage and in red cabbage are well known. We have gluchlorophanin, which is derived from, which gives rise to sulforaphane. We have indole 3-carbinol, allyl isocyanate from cinegrin, and benzyl isothiocyanate. And these, a lot of research has been done on these and shows these to be powerful, plus all the others we don't know. Indole 3-carbinol is an isothiocyanate. It is a benzopyrrole, and it is very powerful. It is broken down into other non-sulfur compounds. It is a sulfur compound in itself. And these make the red cabbage able to protect against cancer from a variety of different mechanisms, reducing inflammation, helping to prevent the cancer from inducing new blood vessels to grow to supply it, helping to prevent cell proliferation, interfering with the cancer cell cycle, and helping to promote what we call apoptosis, getting the cancer cells to commit suicide by blocking certain metabolic pathways. We've seen one study from Poland showing impressive reduction of breast cancer risk in women consuming large amounts of cabbage. So women, breast cancer protection, cabbage, all types, but especially the red purple. And they said four servings a week gave a considerable reduction in breast cancer risk. So if you use some red purple cabbage every morning in a green shake, slice up some of your salad, steam it lightly or saute it lightly with some broccoli and so on. Don't forget that the sauteing be light, not heavy, they say. Massive cruciferous vegetable protection. So in this context, then, the glucosinolates, the isothiocyanates, and cancer prevention, it is worth noting that one of the indole 3-carbinol compounds can be further converted in the stomach under healthy conditions, as I said before, to diindolyl methane, which has been shown to be a valuable cancer prevention compound. You go into the health food store, you see I3C and DIM on sale in capsules, a lot of money they cost. Eat the red cabbage every day. All right, they also looked at digestive tract support of cabbage, and the researchers have shown that long established in health research is the role of cabbage and cabbage juice in helping heal the stomach from peptic ulcer and helping the stomach to rid itself of that vagabond bacterium, Helicobacter pylori. But more recent studies on cabbage have looked at the overall health benefits of cabbage, not only for the stomach, but for the digestive tract as a whole. Present-day studies make it clear that cabbage contains a variety of nutrients of potential benefit to the stomach and intestinal lining. And these substances are amino-like substances like glutamine and other polyphenols. And what they do is that they strengthen the lining of the intestine. They help to inhibit the growth of bad bacteria like Helicobacter pylori inside the stomach. And then they stimulate the growth of healthy bacteria which help to protect the entire intestinal tract. And so cabbage juice, very healing for the stomach. Acid reflux, peptic ulcer, gastritis, and it helps the stomach to get rid of Helicobacter pylori. Cabbage itself, the whole cabbage, provides fiber that feeds the good bacteria, and they can use some of that fiber to produce vitamin K2. And cabbage therefore helps to clean the colon. It gives fiber. It promotes healthy gut bacteria. It gives a whole range of antioxidants and anti-inflammatory that reduce inflammation, that reduce the risk of breast cancer, colon cancer, bladder cancer, prostate cancer. Cabbage, wonderful, cheap vegetable. And the red cabbage, you can use it every day as a good health insurance in whatever form. Then, so the U.S. Agriculture Department says this very low cost and low calorie cabbage, the fiber in it makes it a good thing to add to your diet without adding calories. You can eat a plate full of red cabbage, very few calories, lots of fiber, lots of protective phytonutrients without putting on a pound. And this added fiber also improves the entire GI tract, protecting against colon cancer, promoting good healthy bacteria, and thereby, that is by promoting the good healthy bacteria, strengthening the immune system. Cardiovascular support from cabbage, they looked at that again, summarizing it. Recent studies on cabbage intake, especially studies on the intake of red cabbage, have looked carefully at the potential for cardiovascular support from this vegetable. The results have been very encouraging. Blood levels of carotenes, lutein, total antioxidant capacity in the blood have been found to increase very, very high, and bad cholesterol is reduced. The arteries are made more flexible, and of course, looking away from the cardiovascular system, they said that one of the ways in which cabbage intake can lower your total and bad cholesterol is through the process of binding with bile acids. Your liver uses cholesterol as a basic building block to produce bile acids. Bile acids are special molecules that are important for the digestion and absorption of fat. And when they are present in your digestive tract, fiber-related nutrients in the cabbage can bind these bile salts and help to get rid of them. And this stimulates the liver to make more bile salts, therefore lowering your cholesterol level and also helping to keep your gallbladder clean. A lot of people who are obese and who eat a lot of fried, greasy stuff develop gallstones in the gallbladder and inflammation of the gallbladder. And we're seeing quite around the world now, gallbladder cancer peeping up its head, and that's a treacherous cancer as well. So high fiber cabbage, red cabbage, with its anthocyanins, polyphenols, fiber that helps to bind bile salts, will help promote clearance of the biliary tree. So cabbage, as you know, with the cabbage head with the round shape, of course the leaves too, which we in the Caribbean call the cabbage leaf or cabbage bush, and the head itself made up of layers of leaves. It is a member of the family known as the cruciferous vegetables. Of course, the other members of this family, kale, broccoli, collards, Brussels sprouts, all cruciferous vegetables provide integrated nourishment across a wide variety of nutritional categories and provide broad, wide spectrum protection. And eating more cruciferous vegetables, therefore, is the way to go. And cabbage, and especially the red cabbage, is one very cheap, high quality variety. So cabbage and all of its fellow cruciferous vegetables all belong to the family we call the Brassicaceae family. They help to strengthen the immune system as well in this pandemic environment, and they are excellent for health. So we encourage you then to use more cruciferous vegetables. And the one that is best known and cheapest of them all, cabbage, and the red purple cabbage. You can throw in some Brussels sprouts in there and just have cruciferous vegetable saute. Put the more cabbage in your morning green shake, but use more of it because the research is showing wonderful protective properties in terms of cancer risk reduction, anti-inflammatory, promoting good healthy gut bacteria. And notice the organs protected in terms of cancer risk reduction: breast, bladder, prostate, colon, primarily, and others as well. So we've looked at a cheap vegetable. You don't have to say, well, times are hard and we can't get cabbage. You can grow some in your backyard. Even if you plant the seeds, you can plant some seeds just to sprout up and pick them when they're just sprouted. That is wonderful protection, more protective molecules than even the adult mature cabbage. So cabbage can be grown in your backyard in a bucket, anywhere. It is, you can grow it without using any sprays if you're worried about sprays. When you're growing your own backyard, you can go and crush off the butterfly eggs that are going to form the worms that will eat the leaves. You can even use some other natural sprays, a little cayenne and garlic with a little bit of a squeezy soap powder, just to spray off worms, and then wash it down, of course. But you can grow your own cabbage and grow it organically, and there you have it. Such a wonderful vegetable, so cheap and so full of protection, and that vindicates my good friend Professor Fraser's constant statement, because anytime he sees an article in the newspaper saying to be vegetarian or to eat healthy is expensive, he answers by saying no. He has done the research years ago. You can buy some very ordinary vegetables. You don't have to look for so-called sophisticated things. And the cabbage, the lowly cabbage, so cheap, is high quality. And the red purple one can beat any other in the kind of protection it will give you in terms of cancer protection, diabetes protection, anti-inflammatory, and so on. So let's push more of the cruciferous vegetables. Let us all use more of them, and let us use more red purple cabbage, whether we use it in our salads, lightly steamed, sauteing, or put it in a green shake, or in a vegetable shake on mornings. Good stuff, the cruciferous vegetables. And this afternoon we focused on the lowly cabbage and the red purple variety, so packed with nutrition. And that study up in Denmark, the people who were so protected against type 2 diabetes: cabbage, the root vegetables, oatmeal and rye rather than too much wheat, and apples and pears. And by the way, in the study that was showing that fruits, notwithstanding their natural fructose content, actually reduce the risk of diabetes type 2, apples and pears came out very high. And of course, from the old time days, we used to hear an apple a day keeps the doctor away. So apples now shown to be as good as they always were thought to be, because they contain very important antioxidants as well, that are very protective, and they contain, of course, quercetin and some apigenin, and others. Very good stuff. So eat your fruits and your vegetables. And don't forget the cruciferous vegetable family, so important. And today we focus on red purple cabbage as a cheap and very high quality vegetable and it contains quite a bit of protein and fiber. So when you combine that with broccoli and cauliflower, your protein is covered. Eat it with some lentils, you're covered. And you don't need the extra calories, and it helps you to trim down your weight. And wonderful, simple articles. Lentils, cheap. Red cabbage, cheap. Chinese cabbage you can grow in your backyard. So we can find cheap ways to be eating healthy and to fight off these chronic scourges without thinking we have to spend a whole set of money buying the processed, even the processed vegetarian stuff that may taste good and give the so-called meat substitute taste. That's only taste off. We need to be simpler and healthier, and the price can be very low. Red cabbage, Chinese cabbage, the root vegetables, and eat simply, eat naturally, eat cheaply, and still high quality. And we focus on the red cabbage this afternoon. Okay, so I'm going to pause now for any questions so that we will finish on time for the next session on Shelju. Any questions, any comments to share? Feel free.
Hello, good evening, President Sabbath.
Yes, good evening, Brother Groening.
Yeah, I've heard it said that you should be careful when eating raw cabbage, as people will usually do, for example, when they're using coleslaw, because it is said that sometimes cabbage can contain what is referred to as tapeworms. Is that true? And also, could you actually explain what is it that is characteristic of the tapeworm that renders it harmful if ingested by a person? Thanks.
But we don't have a tapeworm problem in our part of the world here in the Caribbean nowadays. The tapeworm would only come on these vegetables if an animal feces gets on them, because the tapeworm lives in animals and the eggs come out in the feces and so on. So not that the cabbage or any vegetable is a source of any of these intestinal worms. They will have to get on these from manure or from animals defecating on them. And then if they're not thoroughly washed, that would be a problem. The tapeworm, of course, in ancient times when it was a big problem, of course, nowadays we have modern anti-worm medications like albendazole, Zental, and so on that can effectively clear such worms, not like before 1950 when we were in trouble with them. But these worms, of course, hookworm and tapeworm, latch on the intestine and suck out all your nutrition. The hookworm, the American killer, and the other kinds of hookworm would suck out your blood and make you severely anemic. This is in the old time days. And the tapeworm, the same thing. Suck all your nutrition, you just waste away. Of course, only in certain parts of the world we have this problem now where there's extreme poverty and poor socioeconomic and hygiene conditions. But as I said, it would have to be an animal defecating on the thing. So it is always important to wash your vegetables thoroughly, but that is not a major problem in our part of the world with our vegetables. But thanks for raising it.
Okay, well, is the tapeworm normally visible to the naked eye, or is it too small to see? If it happens to be on cabbage or any other vegetable.
There are several types of this thing. There's the long one, which is huge. Then there's the dwarf one, the dwarf tapeworm. All of them are dangerous in that they can suck out your nutrition. When it is in the egg form, you're not going to see it the larva form. You're just going to swallow it, and then it goes down. It starts to grow and so on. As I said, coming from animal feces contaminating the vegetables, or in some parts of the world, human feces, may be used to manure as well. So in that case, you just have to remember to wash your vegetables thoroughly, especially in places where there is such a risk.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Douglin, good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon.
Just telling Brother Coney that you ain't got nothing to worry about the worms, not even the Christmas worm that you don't got to bother about in Barbados, my boy. But it's good that you can touch on the use of cabbage. I remember sometime back in a previous Have Talk, you spoke about taking cabbage and grating up adding salt to it to make what you call it again?
Sauerkraut.
Yeah, sauerkraut. Right.
Sauerkraut.
And that makes it more makes the
Vitamin
the good
K.
parts of cabbage more bioavailable to the body. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so use sauerkraut as well. It's very, very excellent. But that's when it was growing my own cabbage. Now cabbage, the purple cabbage you're talking about is not that easy to grow because they are always invariably much smaller than the green ones. It is best not to even try growing them yourselves from seeds, but it's best to purchase the small plant from any of the places that sell you plants. So it only costs like 10, 15 cents a piece, and you're well on your way within 4 to 5 weeks to be getting some pretty big cabbage. I remember when I was eating cabbage a lot, what I did, and I guess you will do it too, is that as the cabbage grow, I take off the outer leaves and let the center continue to grow, right?
Yes.
And I can have cabbage in the ground for a month until they finally form heads, and I have eaten off all the outer leaves, cooking them like how the old time people used to cook Chinese cabbage and rice, right? Those are things that were very big. Or I could take them and I can juice them. Now, the juice of cabbage has a very strong flavor for some people, for those who are not accustomed to eating cabbage. And some people say you can put an apple with it. That is an English apple, not a golden apple. And that also helps to tone down the taste. But me and you, we hardcore, so we would use it just so we don't want them to tone down the taste. But it is very, 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 very nutritious and very good. And it really helps in the healing of warm stomach. We have a lot of people, especially vegetarians, who have bad stomachs, if you want to call it that way, and we are being blamed, or we are being taken to task saying that we don't eat meat, but yet we eating all these vegetables. Sorry, we are vegetarian, but yet our stomachs are giving us trouble. It is not the vegetables that cause any problem, but that we're eating a lot of processed food, that we are moving from vegetables and trying to make a meat substitute out of it. So if we stick to the natural, as you said, the natural lowly cabbage, yes, it can work. As you said correctly, it's best to take off those worms. And it seems to be a big task if you're growing a lot. Like you've got like 100 in the ground, and to go outside every morning before work and to look at every leaf to take off every caterpillar that I see is very hard. But neem water does it. Sometimes a little bit of cayenne pepper water does the same thing. As you say, a little soap. People go into soap, the hardware store, and buy something called safe for soap. Applying a little bit of soap, liquid and water in a spray bottle does the same trick, you know? So you can grow your own cabbage and avoid those areas, those places where cabbage is heavily sprayed. Most of the cabbages that are sold in the supermarket, especially we like to buy the big, clean one with the leaves look pretty. Anytime you see cabbage leaves so clean, they are heavily sprayed. You cannot get away from that. You cannot grow a cabbage, not even a Chinese cabbage, without the insects attacking it, because the insects know it is extremely nutritious. So that's why they love to eat it. They don't touch lettuce, but put cabbage next to it, all the cabbage eat down. And if you go to work in the morning and can't even half of it gone, especially when those big caterpillars get on it. So they know the nutrition that is in cabbage. So if they know, anytime I have to buy cabbage and I don't have any home, I look for the ones that have holes in it, full of holes. Adrian Blackman gives me cabbages sometimes, especially Chinese cabbage that he grows in abundance. Once it's full of holes, I eat in it, because when it chop up and it steam and it cook or whatever we do with it, I don't see the holes. I just open the hole in my mouth and eat. You understand what I'm saying? But it is extremely nutritious. Thank you for that wonderful lecture.
Thank you. All right, well, our time is coming up. And we'd like a little 2-minute break before Elder Leacock comes on. So thank you. And don't forget the lowly cabbage, cheap, but abundant in nutrition. Let's use more of it in these times when we have to keep our immune systems up and fight against the scourge of cancer all around. We thank God for all of these gifts in nature. Let us thank Him and use more of them and fight on as we approach the final events. Thank you very much. Let us close in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for giving us another opportunity in the name of Jesus to share in the health principles, primary prevention, and as we looked at the red cabbage, another gift from you to us, we thank you and grant that we will put these principles into practice in these hostile times in which we live. In Jesus' name we pray with thanksgiving. Amen. So thank you. You have a couple of minutes break before Elder Leacock comes on with the family session. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon to everyone. I hope you can hear me. Good afternoon to everyone. We come here again to look at this important subject of God's blueprint for marriage and family life. And this afternoon, we'll be looking at the dynamics of effective communication. The dynamics of effective communication, a very important subject indeed. Now, this subject of communication is a very broad one. So we may take a couple of weeks on it, not a couple of weeks, well, a couple of sessions. Sorry. Before we begin, however, let us pray. Let us bow our heads for prayer. Our dear God and Father in heaven, be with us during this session. Teach us some of the key salient points of how to communicate effectively and what is involved in the communication process. Guide and direct each one who shall listen attentively, and those who desire change, even in this area of how to communicate effectively. Give us the guidance of your Holy Spirit. Teach us what we need to know, and grant success in our marriage and family life as we learn to communicate after the manner of Jesus, learning what is involved in communication. So guide and direct us now. Take control of this session in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, communication is a very big word. And I wonder if anyone can venture to give me a definition of communication. Anyone want to venture to give me a definition of communication?
Sending and receiving.
What communication is.
Sending and receiving.
We may not.
Sending and receiving of messages.
All right. Sending and the receiving of messages. Okay. Critical definition there. We're going to be looking at the dynamics of this thing called communication, and effective ones at that. Effective communication at that. Now, communication is between two people, and that consists of what Sister Lilith says, the transmitting and the receiving, the giving and the receiving, the sending and the receiving of messages. Critically important. If both parties are good at performing the task effectively, then there's good communication between the two individuals. Good communication. But I see a lot of communication that is not effective. People do not know how to give proper directions. Very important. People get lost. And some people, even if you give them clear directions, they're still going to get lost. Some people are famous for that. Now, good direction is critical, especially in the area of communication, so that people can get to their destination exactly and on time. But people, as they say in Barbadian parlance, don't know how to give direction. They will tell you, go down the road and you can see a shop on the left and a gap next to it. Don't take that road. Take the next road and go down that road and you make a right? You take a left, right? And then you go straight or further across and then you see a cow. That's your landmarks. And then you keep going straight in that. Those are totally, we use it in Barbadian parlance, but that is totally misguided. But that is the way how people communicate, by the way how they give direction. And I haven't met many people who give clear, simple directions. We're going to look at some of the characteristics of good communication as well. They're not good at communicating. They don't even give the direct direction to the destination or the landmarks along the way, where to turn off and what to expect. So even expectation is involving communication as well. We're going to find out a lot in this communication process. That's what it is. All right. And there are people who do it effectively and some who don't know, and they make you get lost along the way. A lot of people are getting lost because of wrong communication signals and messages. And Even in advertising, people give wrong messages that can be interpreted in a number of ways. So apart from the message being clear, it must be direct and simple. So we can communicate without talking. Is that possible? Can people communicate without talking? That's highly possible. You can communicate without talking because we have sign language, we have gestures that people can read, and we have Braille and other means that people communicate. You can communicate in other ways, all right? Good communication, however, is for the purpose of conveying meaning and messages. So if a person doesn't get your meaning, what you really mean, you have not communicated to that person. They don't get what you mean. If you have not gotten over the message clearly, the person doesn't understand what you are saying, then it means you have not communicated. You may have talked and you might have used a lot of words, but you have not communicated. Now, usually in a discussion, when people disagree with that person, they understand what that person may be saying. And people who people disagree with generally usually communicate well. The fact that people oppose what they're saying. But people who don't oppose, you can't tell if they agree or disagree if they do not communicate. So communication is key. And the key in communication is understanding, seeking to find out where the other person is coming from, trying to see their point of view rather than our own narrow, selfish point of view. Very important. And that's empathy, we call it empathizing, trying to see things from the other person's point of view, listening for their loaded words. Because people miss the loaded words in sentences where people are trying to describe how they are feeling about something. They miss the loaded words. Communication is key. Good communication is for the purpose of what? Of conveying meaning and understanding and messages. Very good. So if you don't understand where the person is coming from, the person is not communicating with you effectively. If you don't get the message that they have communicated, quote unquote, you have not communicated with you. Or if they do not understand what you mean by what you say, if they don't understand certain words that you are using, then communication again has fallen down right there. Your people must understand the words you're using. They must understand what you mean. The gestures must harmonize with the words. So if I tell you, go up a little higher, and I point downward, go up a little higher, contradictory. Or come down a little lower, come down a little lower. That is a confusion of signals, as it were, where the physical doesn't harmonize with the verbal. And we have some of those examples that people use. So if the messages or meanings are not clearly understood, then there has been no communication. And that is why sometimes you must use illustration in order to carry home the message. The illustration should contain the message that people can clearly understand. And that is what Jesus the Master did. When he was trying to communicate to his disciples, he used parables, he used illustrations from nature, he referred back to the Old Testament, he used things that were happening around him. And that is important in communication as well. Many people don't communicate effectively even to their spouses. They assume, or they guess, or they hint, but they do not communicate directly. You're going to learn later on there's direct communication, indirect communication, as well as other methods, as it were. So communication is what we call a multi-level or a multi-level skill or multi-level ability that some people take for granted. It's a skill. The ability to hear words someone else is saying is only one part of the dynamic communication. One part, hearing. That's a natural ability, natural. But listening is different to hearing. Because you can hear, but you may not be listening. And you may be a good hearer, but not a good listener. And a good listener looks for the meaning and listens and tries to understand the message. A good listener. And many people have ears to hear, but they don't hear nor understand what the other person is saying. And some people who don't have ears to hear understand better than those who have ears to hear. So, and there's a lot more involved in just words when it comes to conversation. And there are many methods of communicating other than just talking. So the ability to hear the words someone else is saying is only a small part of the dynamic of communication. And it involves much more, such as the ability to read facial expressions. Did you read that expression? As one of surprise or doubt? Yeah. One of anger, upset, or frustration. You know, many people are not emotionally intelligent when it comes to reading expression on the faces of people. And those expressions on people's faces are usually involve what is happening in their mind, how they are thinking. So you have to watch facial expression. That's a very important way of communicating as well. Gestures, hand gestures, or eye gestures. You know when people do that, what they mean? Here we go again, you know, roundabout kind of communication to the person. So it involves much more than the ability to read facial expressions or gestures or even the tone of voice. When you are communicating, you must make sure that you have your strong tone at the start right through to the end. You don't drop it near the end. It loses the force of the message you are conveying. And the person not hearing the ending may assume that you said X or Y. So keep that strong tone right to the end if you're going to communicate effectively. Very important indeed. All right. Otherwise, you lose sometimes the force of what you're trying to convey. So that's tone of voice. And body posture has a lot to do with communication as well. If I sit in with my leg a little slanted, some people can say I'm tired, I'm frustrated, or that I am bored. Body posture, all of those together at the same time, they go together at the same time as listening to what the person has to say. Very important indeed. Now, people who can hear well, speak well, and are good listeners are not necessarily good at communicating. Even those who may be good listeners, they may not be good at communicating their feelings or their emotions. Women are better at communicating their emotions than men. Men don't like to express their emotions. They don't like to express how they feel. They don't like to describe their feelings lest they appear as coming over as weak. So they keep it within and they say, well, what do you have to say? They use that technique of asking what the other person has to say when their opinions were asked. So you get clashes occurring. We come into that, all right? Now we say that communication is dynamic. What do we mean by dynamic? Today, there are what we call 7 and probably more levels or principles of effective communication. And these 7 communications are called seven principles of communication. And they are called the 7 C's, C of communication. They say that communication must be clear. They say that communication must be concise. Communication must be concrete. Communication must be correct. Communication must be coherent. Communication must be complete. And communication must be courteous. even courtesy comes in. Because if you come over the wrong way to people, they're going to reject what you have to say. People are not interested so much in what you have to say, but in how you say it, as it were. And that's critically important, because if what we are conveying, others don't like the spirit of it, they're going to reject the message. And that's important. So we always communicating, so you know that's going to come up all the time, those dynamics. We often write emails, or we have to facilitate meetings, or we have to participate in conference call or Zoom chat, as it were. We have to create reports, right? Expressing, again, communicating. Writing is a way of expressing. Writing a letter, writing a journal, and that can be used as a therapy as well. Journal writing. I recommend some clients to write journals or some to express how they feel, a diary. And then I read it, I can get their feelings much clearer than if they have to try to express it to me. And I get the context of it as well, once I can get the full. So we have to devise presentations that will impact on people. That calls for effective communication in order to reach the heart, not just the intellect. You want to reach the heart of people. Husbands and wives communicate, but they do not reach each other's heart. They may reach the head, intellectual aspect. They may be stimulated intellectually, but definitely not emotionally. So there are no emotional connections. Very important. We call them emotional connections or bonds or emotional deposits. Now, emotional deposit, like emotional bank account, means that you have something to draw on. If there's nothing to draw on, you're going to have problems. Remember, we said in life there are three kinds of people. There are the givers and the takers. If a giver marries a giver, there's a lot to draw on, because all two are given into that account. If a giver marries a taker, whatever is being given is being taken out. You're going to have problems and challenges. But when a taker marries a taker, may the Lord have mercy on them both, because sooner or later they will devour one another. And communication also has to do with that. Communication is designed to be a win-win, not a win-lose or lose-lose. Communication must be for the purpose of win-win. Both individuals win. Even if they disagree, they can settle things amicably, and it does not affect the friendship or the relationship, which has been based on honesty, trust, and love, and forgiveness. Very important principle, not just for marriages, but also for family life. We will come to this part soon about expressing how we feel about things. People are very reluctant to express how they feel about situations. They don't even want to participate when there's discussion time. Everybody prefers to keep quiet, lest what they say embarrasses them. So they say nothing and allow others to express their opinion. Though you have no reason, the beauty slogan, Barbados Union of Teachers slogan, you have no reason to complain if you sit by idly and do nothing while others are doing something. You have no reason to complain if you do nothing about it. So we can't even complain of those who may not be communicating effectively if we ourselves are not communicating effectively. We are saying nothing, others come forward, and they're the ones that get the spotlight. They're the ones that get the attention. They're the ones who the people listen to, that are supposed to represent us. They're the ones who are speaking. They're the ones who represent us. And people get an impression about us based on those who are forward, but they may not always be communicating effectively. So communication can give an impression to the world. Very important, therefore, to communicate effectively and therefore understand the dynamics of what is involved in communication. I'm not talking about talking. all of us get into debate, sometimes with our colleagues and others. We can spend almost an entire day communicating. So how can we provide that boost that is needed to increase even productivity? Some people talk for a living and they make money. They do seminars, they give motivational talk, they inspire people, and they get paid for it. So they do what they're doing and they like doing, and they're getting paid for it. That's their niche. But with COVID coming in now, everybody wants things on Zoom. So therefore, they don't get paid for their motivational talk or for what they are sharing with others. That's the disadvantage with COVID. So we can make sure that we communicate, if we are going to communicate, in the clearest and most effective way possible. By clear, we mean that number one, be clear, because when we are speaking or writing to a person, be clear about your goal and the message that you want to convey. What is your purpose in communicating with this person? You must have a purpose for communicating with a person. If you are not sure, then your audience won't be sure either. So we need to be sure. And to be clear, we have to try to minimize the number of ideas sometimes that we may have in each sentence. You must make sure that it is easy for your reader to understand your meaning or for your listener. And people shouldn't have to read between the lines. They shouldn't have to do that, reading between the lines to understand what you're saying. Jesus said that the scribes of Pharisees were doing just that. It could be this or it could be that. And people were left bewildered. Their statements were ambiguous, vague, and people never understood what their conclusion was. So make sure that it is easy for those who are listening and that they don't have to read between the lines. Many a time, we leave people to read between the lines and make assumptions then on our own on their own, to understand what you are trying to say to them. That should not be so. Be clear. Don't be afraid to speak up, to give your opinion, or even to differ. Yeah, you have the right to differ as well, and you have to do it in a respectful manner. Even children can differ with their parents, but they should do it respectfully. Information and action are required. Not just giving messages, there's information, but action is required. And it must be clear so that the reader or the listener has the information that they need to take action with. We mentioned just now concise, another principle of communication. Concise, what do you mean? When you are concise in your communication, you stick to the point and keep it brief. Your audience doesn't want to hear us to read 6 sentences or to hear 6 sentences when you could communicate your message in 3 sentences. By concrete, we mean when your message is concrete, then your audience has a clear picture of what you are telling them. And you should ask questions if they're understanding you, or give an example of what you mean. There are details, but not too many, and vivid facts, and there's laser-like focus. You get the attention of the people. Your message is solid when it's concrete. Then there's correct information that is needed. Correct information that is needed. When your communication is correct, it fits your audience. The audience get the message. Not like the old man that told a young boy who was crying when he came to school for the first time, young man, don't cry, because when you cry, it makes you ugly. That helped the young man remain, stop crying. But he sent another message after that, through a question. That means you used to cry a lot. So you can imagine how the old man looked. Wrong information, incorrect. But when you communicate correct information, it fits your audience. And correct information, communication, by the way, is also error-free communication. Very important. Do the technical terms you use fit your audience level of education or knowledge? Because sometimes people have to give reports, and they're giving a report to the public, and the terminology and the technical terms and languages that they are using, the people in the audience do not understand. It doesn't fit the audience. You have checked your writing or for grammatical errors. Have you checked? Do people check? Have you checked your writing, what you are sending on email or WhatsApp for grammatical error? Because sometimes they don't understand some people's language at all. And they speak like Chinese. Remember, spell checkers don't even catch everything all the time. But read over what you're saying and see if it makes sense to you. Because if it doesn't make sense to you, it will not make sense to others. All right, all names, sometimes that's spelled correctly. I see people spelling some names of things that I can't even guess it correctly. But that's important. Then there's, apart from being correct, information being correct, we also have coherent. But let me go back to correct in a minute, because I have in social work, we do what we call a trust experiment, where clear instructions are given that an individual closes his eyes, stands up on a chair, and falls backward. And others in the group are told to stay behind and catch him. But the person left out that he should fall backward. So while everybody is behind him, waiting to catch him, at the count of 3, he fell forward. You know what that did. So when a critical piece of information is left out, it can cause a lot of damage. The person fell straight forward. I don't know if he understood the message at all. Did he get the communication? I don't think so. The persons were behind him waiting for him to fall backward, and he was told to fall, and the others will catch him. But I don't know what happened there, but definitely that was not clear to him, or he had a problem processing the information that was given to him. Some people have a problem with processing information. The information processing system in their brain does not always click or may not be coherent to them. When we talk about coherent, when we say coherent, when your communication is coherent, it is logical. It makes sense. All points are connected. All the points are connected. The fact that he is standing there, he has to fall. He should know the others are behind him, but they're supposed to catch him, so he's supposed to fall backward. It must be coherent. All the points must be connected and relevant to the main topic, trust. And the tone and the flow of the text is consistent. That's what we mean by coherent. Then also there's complete. In a complete sentence, the audience has everything they need to be informed and, if applicable, take action. When people take action and they don't understand, they don't have the complete picture, that's a problem. There will be problems there as well. Let me give you in complete, you may find context as well. A child came home excitedly and told his parents that they'll learn how to make babies that day. They'll learn how to make babies that day. And the mother especially was very upset and angry that you should be teaching a 6-year-old child about making babies and how. Child was very excited, but instead of asking the question, she wanted to complain to the Ministry of Education. Somebody persuaded her to talk to the principal first. And the principal said, I think you need to talk to the teacher to get the right context of what happened. You need the complete picture. So she said she didn't need to talk to the teacher because no teacher had a right to talk to children about babies at that age, how to make babies. And when she was fully persuaded to go to the teacher said, ask the child what she meant. And the child said, we learned to make babies by taking a Y off the word and adding IES. So they were learning singular to plural, as it were, and how to make babies. You take the Y off the word, B-A-B, Y, take the Y off and add IES. That's all the child meant, but not a big issue. Do you see how wrong communication or not willing to have it clarified or not to hear the complete story can always create problems. So if you're going to communicate effectively, then it has to be complete. You must understand put it in the right context. Now, I was told of advertisement, a number of advertisements that went something like this. This evangelist was coming by the name of Bertha Belch. And Bertha Belch was coming as a missionary from Africa. And the advertisement says, come here, Bertha Belch, all the way from Africa. So in our parlance, we understand Bertha Belch, all the way from Africa. And that communication was very jovial to the people who heard it. That was the ad that was put up for Bertha, who was coming to speak. Then we have another situation where they were advertising a ladies' rummage sale. And they said, ladies, there will be a lot of things available at the rummage sale. Bring even, she said, even at the rummage sale, ladies, bring even your husbands. Was the husband supposed to be part of the rummage sale that the women were supposed to bring? Or were the women supposed to bring their husband along with them to the rummage sale? Not as a part of the rummage, but to buy or whatever have you, rummage sale. All right, so we can go on how people through advertisement communicate the wrong message, or through direct speech, or through signs or body language or gesture can communicate wrong information and therefore not communicate at all. So does your message, when it is clearly understood, call to action so that your audience clearly knows what you want them to do? That's important. Otherwise, you have not communicated to them effectively. Have you included all the relevant information? Is it complete? Contact names, the dates, the time, the location, and so on. One little word alone can make a big difference. There was a book advertised as having written by a man, how to change your wife in 10 days or 30 days. And the book sold by the hundreds until the author recognized it was a mistake. It wasn't supposed to be wives, it was supposed to be lives. How to save your lives in 30 days. The men had bought up the book. After that was corrected, only 3 people bought the book. The men wanted to know how to change their wives in 30 days. When in fact, the book was about how to change lives. So one word alone can be loaded with wrong consequences and can give a wrong message altogether. Very, very important. So our message that is being conveyed, communication, must be complete and also courteous. Courteous communication is friendly, open, and honest. Notice what I said, friendly, open, and honest. Some of us are not friendly, we are not open, and we are not honest. If the other people, I like people who are honest with me, who will open up and tell me, well, I don't think you should do so and so. I don't think that is the right move to make. I don't think that, whatever. But others may remain silent, say nothing to you, and then get in the firing squad line to fire at you or seek to expose. That is not good friendship, not good communication. Communication must be in time to help people by conveying the right message and being honest about your opinion. And those are the true friends, as it were, that I love and respect. People who can differ with me, freely. People who try to understand my meaning and my message rather than fumble over the words, as it were. Some people can become hitched on the words that you use and miss the whole essence of it. All right, so courteous communication that is friendly, open, and honest. And there are no hidden insults in it or passive aggressive tones, nothing like that. You keep your reader or your audience viewpoint in mind, and you're empathetic even to their needs. You try to understand where they're coming from and how they meet your needs, as it were. So that's very important. Poor communication or ineffective communication can be a source of frustration. And that's what causes frustration even in marriages. And with the word communication comes understanding and bonding, connection, building bridges. Communication is designed to build bridges, but where there's no communication or ineffective communication is going to hinder the process of development. You know why the towers of Babel were not finished building? There was confusion in the communication process. They could not communicate. Their language was confounded. They could not communicate to each other, and the building stopped. Salvation by works will always fail because of lack of effective gospel communication. Their motive was wrong. They wanted to escape and should another flood come. And they were trying to save themselves by their own self-effort. That's Babylon. Babylon, they call it confusion, religious confusion at that. We have a lot of miscommunication and conflict with different denominations, different churches, because they are not clear. Some are not communicating effectively, and some are not understanding the other person, and some are not willing. They are stubbornly rejecting what they understand clearly as well. Very important. So poor communication or ineffective communication is a source of frustration. If you have to repeat yourself over and over and over again, and the person don't understand, you can be very frustrating. Interpersonal, not just frustration, but interpersonal conflict and stress. It plays an important role in strengthening relationships between friends, relatives, and family members, since we spend a lot of our time, nearly 70% of our time, interacting with our relatives, family, and friends by way of speaking, listening, reading, and writing. It can convey the wrong meaning, or you may not convey anything at all. You know, a man one time, we are told in a story, was held up at gunpoint and asked, "Where is the money?" In Spanish. ¿Dónde está? And they wanted to know where the money was. And the only one who could translate for the man was another Spanish fella. And when the man told him where it was, instead of telling him what the man told him, he said, "Mr. Garcia is a very brave man. He dare not answer that question, and who are you to ask him that question?" What was his purpose? He said what he wanted to say in Spanish to the other person. Of course, the man didn't understand. And that was at gunpoint. So if the man gets shot, the only person who knew where the money was who? The same man who was supposed to interpret. So don't let anybody interpret for you. You understand for yourself. Make sure you get the right communication and you convey to whatever you have to do. Because if you get wrong information, it can be disastrous. And that was a story, remember, a Spanish story, remember some time ago. ¿Dónde está el dinero, plata, whatever the Spanish people use for that? All right. So poor communication leads to unpleasant situations as well. and the breaking up of relationships. The breaking up of relationships. I was reading recently about a situation of a person having an affair with somebody else and the husband finding out. But the message that was communicating gave the impression that it was a person, a man, when in fact it was a dog. They had a very close relationship and they would often play together, lie down together, and so on. And the other person shot that person because of that message. When in fact, it was not clear that it was a dog that they were having this new relationship with. Interesting, huh? The person understood it one way without any clarification whatsoever. The other person understood it and he could not be persuaded otherwise. So simple things like not communication effectively can break up relationship and can lead to unpleasant situations. Oral and written communication is very important, not only to get a job, but to keep the job as well. Oral communication is one of the most effective ways. If you can't talk to your parents, you can't talk to your spouses, whatever, write a letter. I told somebody the other day, just write a nice letter to the person. When they are alone, they are reading it by themselves, thoughts will come into their head. Nobody to argue with. Nobody to argue with whatsoever. Oral communication is one of the most effective ways of communication and considered to be the most important skill that an individual possesses. All right. That is the first segment there. And the key to understanding yourself, communication is to communicate or to pass on messages, not just about something, but about yourself, so that you should come out of communication much more bonded, much more understanding, and much more trustworthy after you come out of conversation. The key to success is understanding yourself. The last thing I'm going to make is this. Dynamic communication was designed to help people win and to achieve a greater degree of success in life and work. And achievers throughout history have had one thing in common: they know themselves, and the achievers don't underestimate what they can do. They don't sell themselves short. They know their own limitations, and by realizing their weaknesses, they are able to develop plans to overcome their shortcomings and take full advantage of their strengths. And that's important in communication. So if you are communicating, there's a lot to communication, as I said, and we will have to continue this unless you have some questions you want to ask about communication. And that leads to the breakdown of many homes and marriages and divorce. It leads to conflict within the homes and families where the dynamics are not understood or where they are not properly acquainted with, and where people communicate by cursing, swearing, fighting and quarreling and those kind of things in a depressogenic environment where there's a lot of criticizing and nagging. We will come to those barriers of communication in a moment, because some people don't understand these barriers and they keep participating in them again and again, driving a wedge and causing it to widen between the two individuals who say that they love and care for one another. Communication is very, very important, and we need to know what is involved in that aspect. Any questions there from anyone?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Communication is a social skill that we learn, but God gives us the gift of discernment, and that can involve communication. That involves communication.
Yeah.
What's the difference between spiritual discernment and regular interpersonal communication?
All right, people who want to communicate interpersonally may not always look beyond the words to the meaning or the thought or the expression, the meaning behind that. They only go by the face value of the words. Discernment goes beyond the words to understand the spiritual connection between what is happening in the person's life and what that person needs. Now, what you need to convey to that person or communicate may not always be what you would have heard with your ears, but what you would have discerned as the point that they especially need. We had the woman at the well who came and who tried to explain certain things, but she didn't understand that Jesus was the Messiah. So Jesus diverted her conversation along a certain line in order to bring out principles. He discerned that she was looking for the Savior, and he discerned that she had need for water. And therefore he used water as his means and vehicle of trying to communicate his message to her. So a person who is discerning can take advantage of what God shows them that the person means. Nicodemus came asking a question, and Jesus told him, except the man be born again. He understood the words literally, but he didn't understand the deep spiritual meaning. He did not discern the meaning of what Christ intended. That's spiritual. Sometimes people came to Jesus with questions. Jesus looked beyond the questions and discerned what their need answers for. And he answered them according to what answers they needed rather than what they wanted to hear to satisfy curiosity. So there's a big difference there between discernment and just hearing with words, and trying with your own human intellect to understand. But in dynamics of marriage and family life, you need to look beyond just looking at the words to understand how the people are feeling, what they're experiencing, and what you may be doing to contribute to that. And that is where the spiritual discernment comes in. But unless you have a connection with Christ and your will is submitted to him, you will not understand what is God's will, even for you in communicating to that person. So they go together. Have I made myself clear there?
Thank you. Very good.
Praise the Lord. Any other questions? And we are told that communication is the single largest factor that's determining the relationship in many people's life. One that has to do with another person and what happens to a person as he lives in life. People have committed suicide because nobody communicated to them that they were loved, accepted, wanted, appreciated, approved. And because of no communication coming from any source, they chose to end their lives. So lack of communication, effective communication, can lead to people making wrong decisions. I've had cases like those. But the main emphasis for communicating is based on three things. Four things. Your content, your understanding, the context of what you are saying, and the value of communication. You must understand the value of communication. What you're communicating must be in the right context. And the people must understand what you are saying, see where you are coming from, and the content must be relatively clear as well. Content of the message, which includes not only the words, but the gesture, the body posture, the movement, and the vocal tones, and the silence as well. As one person said, communication involves a percentage of things. 7% alone is content. Tone is 38%. And the nonverbal cues can make up 55%. The nonverbal cues, like the hand gesture, the movement, tone of voice, facial expressions, and so on. They convey the message much better than just the content. So it's not just what you say, it is how you say it that is important. So if you have something to say to somebody, as one brother told me this morning, pray about it first Ask God to communicate to you what you want, what he wants you to say. Make sure that your voice is not with any angry tones or passion. You may need to establish a connection first before any correction process. Connect before you correct. And then always you may not be the person who has to go and correct that person. It may be somebody else who is close to that person that would be best to go to the person and talk sense into them. Because you have the knowledge or the information, because you may be the leader, does not mean that you have to be the person to connect, to correct that individual. They may very well rebel against you because they may have a certain picture in their mind about you, whereas they may not have it with another brother and may be more open to that brother who can win them so that they can more effectively communicate with you or others. What a dynamic. A lot of dynamics, even in church, work and discipline. How we say what we say, who says it, and what we mean. As a matter of fact, we saw the last time that there are different 6 ways how messages are conveyed. It says that these 6 ways are very complicated. In communication, there are at least 6 messages that can come through. What are those 6 messages? What one means to say. What one actually does say. What the other person hears one say. What the other person understands by what one says. What the other person says about what was one said. And what one thinks the other person said about what one says. 6 messages that can be conveyed, and it's important to be able to be connected to the person. Because when you know somebody, you would know whether they would do certain things. The other day I was accused of doing something which I knew I could not have possibly done because there were other factors guiding my mind why I should not behave or act that way towards this individual or these individuals. I knew it couldn't be me. But the person swore that it was me. I don't know if they misunderstood me for somebody else or somebody else did it and hid. I don't know. It wasn't me for sure. But nonetheless, I said, even if I don't remember at all doing that, but if I have done it unconsciously, I ask your forgiveness. And that didn't solve the problem because they were not on towards me. I was not the best body to talk to them or communicate to them. Somebody else would have to talk or communicate to that person. Not talk, communicate the message that the person can understand because they had difficulty understanding what I was saying. Even if they was trying to reason with the possibility of it being me, they couldn't understand and they were still angry and upset over that. That obviously would cause what? A rift in relationship. Even if you ask for forgiveness from some people, it doesn't make any difference. So why hurt your head? You pray. There are some people you're not going to win all. There are some people you simply have to pray for and leave, or the Bible calls it, deliver into God's hands. So you're not going to win everybody. Not even God can win everybody. Not even God. Can't force them against their will, and they don't will to follow him. So you can't force. So sadly, there will be lost millions, all because, not because God couldn't do anything or didn't do anything, but because they would not respond to God appropriately that he could save them. So remember that you can't win all, even if you communicate like Jesus. Some people will hate you without a cause. That's what the Bible says. They will hate you without a cause. If you are direct, if you are exposing, if you are not afraid to call sin by its right, you will have enemies and gain true friends. The enemies are the ones who are not going to like you or can't stand you or have a grudge against you, but your true friends will be honest and open to you. So communication involves a lot of dynamics. Even for those who are in ministry, pastors or elders or leaders, communication, and they have to communicate an unpopular and unpleasant message in calling sin by its right name. Who likes that? But there's a message that must be born. There's a message that must be born. So you have to watch how you communicate it. You have to be as direct as possible, and you have to use tact and skill. But no matter sometimes what tact and skill you use, like Jesus, you will have enemies still. They will crucify you and seek to put you to death. That's Jesus. They did it to him. Surely as a follower, they will do it to you. So expect it. And when it comes, leave them in God's hands. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So
There's
communication. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
There's an interesting question on the chat. I'd love you to answer it.
I didn't even see the chat come through. All right. Question. And I read an article once that said that when women have a conversation, they're communicating on 5 levels. They follow the conversation that they're actually having, the conversation that is specifically being avoided, the tone being applied to the overt conversation, the buried conversation that is being covered only by subtext, and finally, the other person's body language. Is this quote accurate? And if it is, how are men supposed to understand, interpret what the female means? Well, the truth is, Dr. Popeno spent 21 years studying women and their nuances and their behaviors and so on. And when asked a direct question about how much he knows, he said, to be honest with you, I haven't really discovered much about them. And that's 21 years of research. I don't know if he was being jovial or what, but 5 levels, communicating, not all at once, but within the head, as it were. But that's not just women, that's many people. Because when somebody is talking to you, you are communicating in different ways to them. Your facial expressions, your body language, your gesture, your posture, your eye contact. In other words, if a husband, wife comes home, and the husband comes home and tells his wife, I love you, while burying his head in the newspaper when she comes to the front house to greet him, is that conveying the message, I love you? So they follow the conversation that they're actually having. That's one step. Person said, the conversation that is specifically being avoided, that's true too. The tone being applied to the overt conversation, that's true too. They maybe just be pretending to agree. The buried conversation that is being covered only by subtext seem to be saying the same thing as specifically being avoided, the conversation. And finally, the other person's body language. That's what they're communicating, or that is what messages they're getting from that person's body language. That would be my question. So I'm not sure if they're all accurate. All I can say is that some of them are accurate, but the last one, finally, the other person's body language. Remember you said that they're communicating on 5 levels. So are they communicating with the other person's body language? That'd be a question I would ask. So I can't say they're totally accurate. And men need heavenly, divine, inspired wisdom to know how to deal with women. I have here some areas where what women say is often different to what they mean. And that is something that needs studying much. As I said before, if a woman says, you never help me around the house, those are words, but that is not what she means. Unless the man doesn't do anything at all, lazy. But generally she means, I want you to help me some more. So it is good to look beyond the words and try to find out what is the meaning. And you can do that by asking the person, what do you mean? Give me an example. And you can find out a lot from asking those 2 questions. What do you mean by so and so and so and so? Or give me an example. Because an example can cover a lot of words. One example can cover a lot of words. Thanks for asking that question. Communication as a church, do we communicate effectively when members make mistakes or when they sin? Do we communicate to them that we still love them, that we still forgive them, that we still accept them, even though they have broken their relationship with God outwardly? Do we communicate that we want to rehabilitate them, that they still have there's still a hope for that person, and that they can still crawl out of the embarrassment to make a confession to God and to the church concerning what they have done? What message are they getting? Or do they feel guilty about what they have done and then run away from church instead of coming back to confess? What message? Because I'm told that a man went to church one time and he didn't say something quite right or do something quite right, and the members got against the individual. There's a visitor at the church, the way they spoke to him and so on. And from there, he never went back to church again. He went to a rum shop, smelling not the best, drinking some rum, broke a glass, and the tenders came back to him and were very courteous to him. They clean him up and they give him a complimentary drink. He never stopped going back to that bar because of the way he was treated at the bar compared to how he was treated at church. You see the difference between the two? Like how he was treated at the bar, he was given a complimentary drink, they mop up the floor and they clean his clothes up. Whereas the church members came down hard on him and pushed him out rather than by the attitude. He never went back to church and he never stopped going back to that bar. He had gained some good friends who knew how to treat him well, even when he made a mistake. So how are we communicating as a church to the general public? People who we come in contact with, are we friendly, sociable, willing to help? Do we show them that we are concerned about their welfare? All that's communication. The gospel is to be communicated more through our lifestyle and our family life.
Oh,
He said, let me make the statement then. Who knew how to treat him well. The statement is for the prophet. Hold on a minute. So hold on a minute. The statement is for the prophet makes it that by our family life and in our marriage, we can preach more sermons than anything else. Yes, go ahead.
How to communicate with a person that is talk fast?
How do you communicate with a person who talks fast?
Yeah.
You communicate with a person who talks fast by just listening, and hopefully they will stop, because some people don't stop. You have to find a way out of the conversation because they're not concerned about hearing you.
Okay.
They want to monopolize the conversation. They're talking fast. They're not considering whether you're understanding or not. So they're not concerned about the communication process. They're concerned of just verbalizing what they want to say. And if they're not allowing you to get in something, it means they don't see importance in what you have to say.
Okay.
Those are not friends. Friends, true friends communicate and they make sure you understand what they mean and where they're coming from. And they try to establish bonds through communication, not people who try to get rid of others in order not to be embarrassed. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Another question. How would you communicate with a girl that get a child out of wedlock? How can you communicate to her in a way that will help her out?
You mean help her feel better about herself?
Yeah.
And about what she might have done or what would have happened.
Yeah.
Well, your best bet is to make sure that you speak politely and courteously to her, not inquiring about that situation primarily. Don't make that the issue as yet. Your main business is to build a friendship, a bond with the person that they can trust you talking to you. That's number one. I'm talking about a relationship with the person. I'm talking about a friendship in which they feel comfortable talking to you. You are not judging them, so you speak non-judgmentally. You are not judging them. You're not making them feel guilty about what they have done. All of us make mistakes, and you are not going to deal with that subject yet, because you may deal with the subject and they will say, but you never made mistakes too. So they will judge you. So the most important thing is to connect. Don't seek to correct. The most important thing is connecting with that individual, gaining the person's confidence, admiration, and respect for you as a Christian. Then the person will open up to you. Then you can share what advice they may want to hear. They may need advice from you as to what to do. That is where God will give you the guidance as to what you should tell them. But most important, build a friendship that you can convey your message. The messages are conveyed by friendships and by connection.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks. Okay, thank you.
All right. Somebody else there? Somebody else was saying something? Oh, I see some comments here. Let me read them. No, my phone was off here just now. That is why we must be careful what you say to people. That is not always true. What is not always true? That doesn't have a context to it. Some people talk fast naturally. But the prophecy says that is useless. If you are trying to communicate a message to people, talking fast, even if you understand what you are saying, the other person may not. And people who talk fast sometimes jumble themselves and they do not communicate to the person. The person may not understand what they're saying. It is good to be deliberate in your speech, as the Spirit of Prophecy says, not even to preach fast, talk fast in preaching. The aim may be just to stir up emotion. It is better to speak in a more moderate tone, a more moderate pace, with direct and with illustration, or you can just ask them to speak a little slower if you desire. That may be easier. Why is this not done when men or boys get a child or children out of wedlock? People always dwell on the female, but she could not have gotten pregnant without the male. The truth is, many of the young people who we have to deal with are females who get pregnant with boys out of wedlock. I mean, out of the church, sorry. Out of the church. And then when the young men get somebody else pregnant, they may stop coming to church as well. Yes, the effort must be made to reach them. But generally, for us, it is sometimes the external force impacting on the internal membership that we have to deal with. But we are not here to bash anyone. They have already bashed themselves. They already feel bad about what happened, and they already feel that they may need to confess. The only problem is we need to deal with them in such a way to make confession easier for them. And yes, she could not have gotten pregnant without the male. But the male doesn't usually feel guilty because he is the one who is not the one who brings home the baby. He may impregnate someone who has to carry home a baby. So we don't come down, generally people don't come down hard on the male, but they come down hard on the female because it is 6 months of shame and embarrassment, 9 months, sorry, of shame and embarrassment. Whereas the boy or the male doesn't have any shame or embarrassment, and people don't come down on him as hard as they come down on her, because they say she gone and get pregnant.
So then that
So
thinking
it is
needs
an
to be
unjust
changed.
society, yes. Go ahead.
I said, so that thinking needs to be changed. Where we come down on the lady hard, but
Yes.
the man you give a pass to. You will say, oh, he's a hard seed, and society
Yeah,
has it all
compliment.
mixed up. So we
Yeah.
must balance it and not come down hard on either one of them, but bring them back to the Lord. And that's why any and everybody should not speak to persons like that, because some
Yes.
people have attitude that they're holier than thou.
Mhm.
And like if they never, as you say, never do anything wrong, because that might be that person's sin, but yours could be something that's laying all the time is just as bad, all gonna keep you out of the kingdom.
That's
So
true.
we must be careful what we say to persons as Christians to bring them back to the Lord.
Correct. We must tread very softly to those who might have fallen or be backslidden. The Bible says that in Ephesians chapter 6. Lest you be overtaken by the enemy. We, those that are spiritually strong, ought to restore the weak. Very, very important. Thank you. And all of us in one way or another sometimes have made mistakes in this area, and we have to learn to communicate effectively. Of course, you still have to say what God says about it in love. But you're told that Ellen White was very firm, very, very firm when it comes to dealing with wrongdoing, but very compassionate when it came to the sinner. Firm, but gentle. That is the same way of child training, holding a sparrow or bird or chicken. Firm, but gentle. If you hold it too slack, it's going to get away and probably repeat the mistake. If you hold it too tight, you will kill it. So you have to exercise that proper balance between firm but gentle. I mentioned that at the Sunday church last week. Firm but gentle. You know that you still love them. You hate the sin, but you love the sinner. And you are compassionate towards them, and you let them know God has forgiven them and accepted them because of what Jesus has done, and that they need to apply it personally, and that, we are always here for you. We have to learn the character of God in dealing with sinners, even those caught in the very act, like Jesus. We have to let them know, neither do I condemn thee. They have already condemned themselves. They don't want to be condemned by anybody. Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. But they have to hear the talk about not going to sin anymore. Proper balance. The dynamics of communication. Still open to any other comments or questions? Very big subject. You've not even covered a quarter of it yet properly.
Brother Saul.
Go ahead. Good evening.
Good evening. Do you think that when I agree with you that, for a young person, a young lady getting pregnant out of wedlock, that we should not condemn.
Speak a little louder.
No, I take the point when you said that a person getting pregnant out of wedlock, we should not condemn them. That's not what they need. And I do agree with you on that point. But my question is, if when we make a decision not to bless that baby in the church, don't you think that that young person still feels condemned by our action?
If our actions are not in harmony with God's will and character, yes.
Oh.
And even if we treat them good, sometimes they will still feel condemned, because it is sin that condemns, not God. nor the Christian. It is sin that condemns the conscience. And but sometimes it has a lot to do with who is the person who's mediating for that person. Someone should draw close to the person. Somebody who knows the person may be close to them, or somebody who can draw close to them in order to communicate effectively so that they get the right balance between how they are feeling and how others feel about them. Some are condemnatory and some are willing to restore. But they must get the feeling that we are willing to forgive and restore them. But they have a role to perform as well. But it calls for tact in dealing with how to communicate to them that role. Even in counseling, my hardest task is not dealing with the counseling. My hardest task is to get in. The person doesn't want me to know that they don't want the other person to know that they tell me about the situation, but they want me to deal with the situation without me mentioning their name. That is my hardest task. To be able to get to the person, to reach out to the person without without them knowing the other person has told me to approach them. So I have to use a variety of techniques and strategies to be able to get into the situation and then address the person on the issue, which is the hardest task to me as a counselor.
So, Brother Saul, do you think that counseling, therefore, then is a skill? I call it a skill. Forgive me if I use the wrong word. It's a skill that leaders of church should have. All leaders, that is?
Yes. All leaders or ministers or elders should be counselors. Even though some people may not see the importance of training in that area. Some people believe that any person could be a counselor. And that can pose a problem. But the question is, we must be humble enough and willing enough to learn to improve our own skills as leaders. But yes, it's a skill that everybody should know. Should apply it to their marriage, and they should apply it to the leadership, the people whom they lead. We're going to have some sessions soon for the young leaders or the people who are deacons and deaconesses and young elders on leadership skills and qualities and public speaking. We'll be having some coming beforehand, but we are planning to have one first for them and then open to other and potential leaders, and then open to other members who are willing to learn. You're going to learn a lot of dynamic inside there in terms of witnessing, in terms of public speaking, and how to project the voice and all of that. All that will come with training. And yes, people who lead out should have had training in these areas as well, which is important. But in a big church like ours, sometimes you have some challenges. That is why I recommend people who are closest to the people to be the ones to try to gain their confidence, build a rapport, and seek to help and reach out to them, that they're like Barnabas, can bring that Saul back to the fold. You follow me there? Like Barnabas befriended Saul and brought him back to the fold.
Yeah, thanks.
That's very important. Yes, ma'am.
Why it is, I never could understand our mistakes, and it's always shift on other people, like the elders or even your neighbors or so on and so forth. Why could you help me understand why it shift on other people on the outside instead of on the inside, the parents or the family or so on and so forth? Because it was always said that a parent can see something a far way off, even before it happened, than anyone else. Why is always shift on what somebody outside should do, say, or whatever. Could you
That is
explain that?
because, yes, that's because wherever there's blame or guilt, there's always accompanying it the shifting, and we call it a self-defense mechanism, regression, digression, blame, denial, and doubt and shame. All of those are what we call defense mechanisms that people use in order to shift blame. It started with the Garden of Eden, when Adam said, the woman you, God, gave me. So he came in for blame last. Even though, to my mind, the greater responsibility rests on parents to train their children in decision-making and morals and guide them and come down firm when they have to be, and loving and forgiving and patient. Oftentimes, those qualities are not exercised at home, and the mother wants to kill the children for getting pregnant or for not following their advice. And then they shift that blame to somebody else to make themselves look better in the eyes of the public. Even the person who, we have the big case here of Floyd, George Floyd, where the mother would have told the same perpetrator that he has her backing and that he is innocent, when all the public would have seen what would have happened. So the parents always shift the blame to somebody else, and his church leaders, even the individuals who are guilty, blame the church so as to ease the tension of guilt from themselves, to make themselves feel better, or to make others get the impression that they are the ones who are being abused. But that's the blame game, and that's the shifting of blame and guilt. That comes with guilt that produces all of that. But you have to look beyond that sometimes. Even when people are grieving, they follow some of those principles of loss, like bargaining with God, denial, shame, anger turned inward, which is aggression, anger turned outward, which is blame, and until they come to the point of acceptance. So when the people are going through a crisis, they go through a lot of experiences which affect their thinking. And even the young men that get shot by police, the police get the blame. They could have used some other method, even though the person may have been shooting back, they killed their innocent, sweet boy. What was he doing in criminal activity? Why did he possess a gun and other things? Why was he shooting back at the police? They don't answer those questions. The police get the blame for killing him. Even when ZR drivers get reported, the police on fearing the individual who trying to make an honest dollar. So the argument goes on, all because of a perverted conscience or will, and the issue of guilt and blame. So there's a dynamic we don't always understand, but it is how people do it to solve problems or to make themselves feel better about what has happened.
Leacock.
That's all right, Sister Nell?
Yes, it's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Leacock.
Yes, go ahead, Elder Steve.
Yeah, that's me, right. Answer this question. To be an effective communicator, should you always be straightforward? Or as in Bajan terms, should we say something, should you beat around the bush? Or to be effective, must you always be straightforward?
Sometimes you have to use tact and skill, but you still have to be straightforward in using the tact and the skill. So you always have to be straightforward. You can't compromise. You can't sidestep. You can't remain silent. You can't avoid the situation. You can't put it on somebody else. You have to be straightforward in dealing with them if you are the one that they trust to correct them. but you have to use tact and skill in trying to connect, then correct. But you have to be straightforward in correcting. If you give them an impression that you are less than straightforward in correcting, they're going to be persuaded. They will not get the full guilt involved in what they have done. And the chances are they will repeat it. You follow me?
All right, I understand you. Let's approach it from a different angle. Let's say, for instance, now, some people can be very evasive. We would agree with that, right?
Yes.
Let's say, for instance, now you're communicating, and let's say I was in Nelson Street last night. All right, Sabbath night. Somebody came up to me at church now, comes up to me at church during the Sabbath. Wait, Brother Steve, you was in Nelson Street last night? Now, this is my answer. You sure you see me? What you doing down there? Is that not a way of evading answering the question rather than being straightforward?
Yes.
Now, you might have been there, correct? But
yeah.
Your
how
way
they saw
of
you there,
sowing,
they had to be there too.
right? Your way of sowing seeds of doubt as to your presence actually being there is by the way how you answer, correct?
Yeah. You may evade it, and then they may evade it too.
Right. So therefore, there's evasion on both sides. Sometimes there's only on one side. But the point is, if you are not direct, you're not effectively communicating, because sometimes people sidestep questions. Sometimes they even throw the question back at you in another form, or try to evade the question by asking another question so that you lose your train of thought.
If you understand how to spot liars, that's one of the characteristics. They try to evade by answering another question, or they answer generally like it was seen, but not I saw it. And the other techniques people use to hide their true intent. I remember years ago going to the Plaza Cinema to have my license plates renewed. Somebody saw me going into the Plaza, and I guess they would have shared something, but eventually when it came to me, I just came out open. Since they didn't want to reveal, I didn't want to reveal who they were. I just had to let the individuals who were fair friends know that I went to change number plates at the Plaza. I didn't go into the cinema. They will convey that next time that arises. So sometimes we have to use ways and means, because some people don't want to be direct with you or honest with you. So you have to answer a fool according to his folly. Bible says that answer a fool according to his folly, and answer not a fool according to his folly. That person answered me directly and said, I saw you in the line at Carlton Supermarket going to buy lotto tickets. When I had to come round to the lady to try to get my telephone top up. So they saw me in the line, and this person who was at the counter was dealing with both the top up and the lotto ticket at the same time. I didn't like being there, but I didn't go to buy a lotto ticket. And if they knew me sufficiently enough, they would know that I was going to do something other than buy a lotto ticket. But some people who believe a certain way about you, or may have a negative outlook of you, will believe that you went to buy the lotto ticket. But I don't do that. I just leave them alone. That is how they think about me, and I leave it right there. I can't undo certain everything. So you got to prove them wrong through your lifestyle.
All right, this is another question I have for you. All right. There's a question. Sorry. There's a saying that goes that you should not let your good be evil spoken of.
Correct.
And
that's one angle. Sometimes you can't avoid it. It is not that your good is being evil spoken of, but people want to bring up a case against you.
Thank you.
So you don't always do things to cause people to stumble. There are times when people stumble over what you are doing. You follow me there?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So
Some
look
people
at Jesus'
stumble over what you are
look at
doing. You're
Jesus'
doing things to cause them to
situation.
stumble.
Look at Jesus' situation. Jesus went about always doing good, but yet the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and whoever sees there were
Hated him
found
without a
occasion
cause.
against him.
Correct.
But did that? But was he supposed to stop doing good, given that they had something up their sleeve, so to speak? Shouldn't we not, as Christians, know that within our minds and within our hearts, what we are doing is good, and go about doing that good, despite the fact that some people will get a wrong impression because they choose to get one.
But you have to be
Should we
delicate
also-
there. You have to be delicate right there. If, for example, some people have a reputation about, they know you, but if they are seeing you all the time, for example, another person's company, and you are not doing anything about it, even though you know that it's impacting on others negatively, that can cause a problem. The Bible talks about doing what is good, even though it is offending your brother, when you can help it. If you can't help it, great. You still gotta keep, like Daniel and others, keep praying, even with the windows open, and speaking loud enough that they can hear. But if you can't help it, if you can help it, you should do something about it rather than let your good be evil spoken of. You follow me there?
Correct, very correct. Now, this last one I have for you. When questioning, when asking questions, sometimes you get that to be effective, as I said before, you must be direct, but sometimes people don't want to give you a direct answer. What is the best way then to approach such a situation? In some instances of counseling, it's called probing. Jesus probed, even with the woman at the well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Is it not learning the art of probing a good technique to effectively communicate?
Yes, you have to learn the art of probing and confrontation. Confrontation is not a bad word. You have to know how to confront, and you have to know how to probe. Sometimes your probe interpreters, you're maliciously trying to get involved. Your best approach would be to get close to a significant other of the person, somebody who's closest to the person, to address the person, give the person the tips, and let the person address them. You may not be the person, because you know the situation and it has been brought to your attention, you may not be the best body to deal with it. So it's better to refer it to somebody else, a trained counselor, or a person who is a significant other in the life of the person. That's why sometimes when people are having serious marital problems and they say they don't want any counselor coming and talk, I stay away from those situations. Even if the marriage falls apart, I stay away. I let others deal with that, because they got their message clearly, and I will not be a source of transference or counter-transference in those situations. God does not force his presence where it is not wanted. Somebody doesn't want you to help, don't go forcing your presence to help. That may be a hard one, but it is better to let somebody else deal with the situation.
My brother, last one. This is no one is asking any more questions. This is a technique that I have learned to adopt as a teacher. I don't beat about the bush, I'm always direct. Let's say, for instance, now I ask, I say that I want something done. I do not always give the body the opportunity to back out of it, but I put it to them direct. It's either a yes or a no. I don't give you a maybe. Is that something we should practice?
No. You
Should
put
you
the
leave
person
out-
in two predicaments. One, by publicly confronting them, they feel forced. 2, you give them no option. And that is the problem with confronting or coming straight. Everybody knows the situation, or they are forced to say no to something. They don't want to have to choose between losing a friend and helping a friend. But some people are forced in that situation through manipulation by public confrontation. So that's not a wise course to pursue.
But you know, as a teacher, that sometimes we have to do that. We can't
Let the
allow
person do it
options.
free willingly. You can act them privately and let them determine free willingly in confidence whether they will do it, yeah or nay. Because sometimes people don't want to do it, but they try to evade you and evade the question or be confronted. And so they see you and sometimes they go the opposite direction because they try to avoid confronting you. Some people are non-assertive type personalities, and they find it difficult to say no or to ask persons for money that they would have linked to others, and they don't feel that their rights are important. Those are the non-assertive type personalities, and they don't want to create any conflict with anyone. But then they are the assertive type and they're the aggressive type. Those are the 3 methods of communicators as well: the assertive, the non-assertive, and the aggressive.
So would you say Christ was assertive?
Christ was assertive in a very balanced way. A person who owes money to you, you may say, John, I lent you so and so and so and so. I really would appreciate it back by a certain time. Some people don't want to confront the person and said, well, the other day you remember I lent you some money. Well, or don't worry about that. Forget it. Don't worry. I will get it from another source. And the aggressive person was saying, I need my so-and-so money back. And I need it now, like yesterday. You don't give me back, I can do so and so and so and so. That is the aggressive type.
But brother, sorry, you don't even have to be aggressive like that. All right. Let's say, for instance, now, I wanted to meet with you and I want you to do something for me. But I know that you're a busy person and such like. So I said to you, brother, so you can be available about 6 o'clock this evening. I want to come and ask you a question or two, you know? All right, that is one way of me approaching you that I want to speak to you, correct?
Yes.
Or I can call you and say, brother, so you're home? Are you on my way to you? No, I'll give me there by next 10 minutes. You get me?
Yeah, some people impose themselves.
Would you call that imposition?
Then you may have another appointment at that time.
But you may not either. But you may not either. But the point is,
they will come, but I may not be there. Because they didn't ask my permission if they can come. They just tell me that they're coming and I have another engagement. So I have to go to the engagement. They may come, may not see me, or may have to wait until I'm finished. That's principle.
So it is always good to ask in every situation, correct?
Yes. Direct, simple, honest. And don't necessarily demand or control or insist that the person has to do what you want. Ask a simple, humble question. A true friend is prepared to make sacrifices for his friends. But true friendship should not impose itself on a person's time or means. Some people put themselves in a situation, then they put the situation to me in a locked manner that I can't get out, but lend them the money. You know what I'm saying? Or I would feel guilty if I didn't lend them the money, or if I said no. But learning to say no, we call it learning refusal skills, is a very important part of dealing with people. Learning refusal skills is a very important part of relationships.
So on that note, sir, So on that note, sir, when it comes to dealing with our children, should we offer them options in terms of whether we want them to do something or go a particular way or to practice a particular behavior or not? You know, we are in the age now where we say God doesn't force and everything should be left up to the individual choice, right? Should we now then practice or giving, but not even giving commands, but saying about something, giving the person, your child or whatever, that option to choose whether to follow your direction or whether not to?
The Benjamin Bloom philosophy that has taken hold of America in the 60s, 70s has led to that situation. When it comes to discipline, children have no option. When it comes to choices of food, you can give them options because some people prefer to eat this rather than that. But once it doesn't involve principle, they can have freedom of choice once it is not to their detriment or harm. But when it is principle or obeying parents or doing something like washing the dishes, there should be commands given and insistent upon obeying commands. But again, it depends on the age group, the age level of the person. Children at a young age should know that you mean that they should do something. In other words, if you can't get a child to do something, you are not in control of that child. So therefore, you must insist and not give choices. If you want, you go into a function, you can offer 2 pieces of clothing that are relevant to the occasion and give them a choice. The same piece of clothing, 2 pieces of clothing that are to the same occasion, you can give them a choice. Do you want to wear this or that? But when it comes to, or eating for that matter, if the child don't like broccoli, you can prepare broccoli another way and give the child an alternative that can produce, that can provide the same nutrient as what is in broccoli. But when it comes to obedience, doing chores in the house, respecting authority figures and so on, insistence is key. Your word must be obeyed as law, according to Spirit of Prophecy.
Thank you.
Somebody said that your scenario must be considered a case-by-case basis. Which scenario? You mean the one where people are speaking bad about his good? If I have a friend and that friend wants to go with me everywhere and there we are in nothing, and is it okay for me to do that? Or even if my wife complains about it, or if I'm seeing certain places with the same person all the time, I don't understand what you mean by a case-by-case basis. Those are principles that should guide the person. And there are certain principles that fit in those scenarios. If it's another case altogether different, then there's a different remedy that can be applied. All right, somebody suggested to continue discussion. Your time is gone in truth, by far. So I'm sorry about that. My timeline has been exceeded. All right, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for your questions and so on. Let us pray. Dear God and Father, thank you for this session. Continue to give us the guidance that we need, that each one of us need by your Holy Spirit, how to apply these principles so that our families and our marriages can be happy and successful, and our communication effective. So guide and direct each one of us. Forgive us wherein we have sinned and come short, and help us to be more conscientious of our approach to others by what we say, what we do, and how we communicate. Give us a week of victory in Jesus. Thank you for hearing, for answering our prayer. In Jesus' precious name, amen. All right, thank you for your questions. Thank you for your